China has reached the brink of national extinction only twice in 5,000 years. The first time was after the fall of the Song dynasty at Yashan. The second time was in 1937. If not for desperate resistance, the Chinese nation might have been wiped out by industrialized Japan. What's the difference between the two? The Song lost to Mongol cavalry. In 1937, China lost to steel output. Japan produced 5.8 million tons of steel. China, only 40,000 tons, a 145-fold gap. That was the distance to national annihilation. This is why today's Chinese obsession with manufacturing is not a choice, but a survival instinct. What was China like in 1937? A nation of 450 million, over 90% were peasants. Industry made up less than 10% of GDP, and industrial workers were extremely rare. Still, the tiny bit of industry was mainly light, textiles, flour, matches. Heavy industry that could produce weapons was nearly non-existent. The steel numbers tell the story. Japan 5.8 million tons, China 40,000 tons, 145-fold difference, which meant that before the war even started, the outcome was predetermined. Modern wars aren't fought with numbers, but with industrial capacity. The Japanese division had 48 tanks, 108 artillery pieces, plus air support. China's best German-trained divisions, 24 mortars for the whole division, 0 tanks, 0 aircraft. That wasn't two armies fighting, it was two eras colliding. The Battle of Shanghai was unimaginably brutal. Chiang Kai-shek threw in 700,000 of his best troops, including German-trained elite Central Army units. After 3 months, Chinese casualties were 150,000, Japanese saw 60,000. But the real tragedy wasn't just battlefield defeat. It was that China couldn't even see the true cause of defeat. China wasn't completely without an industrial base. Jiangsu-dong's Hanyang Iron Works was one of Asia's top steel plants, producing 70,000 tons annually. The problem? China had steel mills, but no machine building industry. Steel was smelted, but couldn't be turned into machinery, let alone weapons. As a result, 60% of Hanyang's steel was sold to Japan, who turned it into rifles and artillery to fire back at China. Our own steel became bullets shot at us. That's the tragedy of an incomplete industrial system. When Japan blockaded China's coast in 1937, things turned desperate. No international aid could enter. That's when true industrial capability is tested. No steel, no guns, no chemicals, no gunpowders, no machine tools. You can't even repair equipment. In Chongqing's munitions plants, they tried to make bullets. Copper ran out, so they used iron shells. Smokeless powder ran out, so they used black powder, no precision machine tools. So everything was handmade, resulting in poor quality weapons. Even domestically produced rifles had only a 300-400 meters effective range, far worse than originals, and many units didn't even have bullets. By the 1944 Hengyang campaign, some units had only a few rifles. Most soldiers fought with cold weapons. Imagine a vast nation of 4.5 million Kiontus and 450 million people, yet unable to produce a single decent machine gun. That despair is hard to comprehend. So, after 1949, why did China tighten its belt to build heavy industry at all costs? Because the Korean War taught the lesson again. In 1950, U.S. steel output, 87 million tons. China, 610,000 tons. A 104-2x gap. On the battlefield, the difference was devastating. At Triangle Hill, U.S. forces fired 1.9 million shells in 43 days, leveling hills by meters. The Chinese People's Volunteers hid in tunnels, thirsty, hungry, with no medicine. America fought with steel, China fought with human lives. A company wiped out became a battalion. A battalion wiped out became a regiment. This wasn't war, it was filling the gap in steel with blood. That's why Mao said it best. The US has more steel, but less spirit. We have more spirit, but less steel. Spirit alone without steel came at too great a cost. So China resolved that even if the people had to eat grass, the country would build a complete industrial system. Complete meant from mining to smelting to machine building to weapons production. Miss a single link and it could be fatal in war. That word complete was written in blood. Today, China is the only country in the world with all industrial categories under the UN system. What does that mean? Whatever happens globally, even under total blockade, China can still make everything from screws to aircraft carriers. The 2020 pandemic proved it. While the world scrambled for masks, China ramped daily mask output from 20 million to 100 million in just 2 months. Why so fast? Because the entire supply chain was inside China. Petrochemicals, melt-blown fabric, metal strips, elastic, all there. Other countries had to import raw materials and machines. By the time shipments arrived, the crisis was over. The deeper truth, manufacturing determines your place in the global order. History shows it. Britain built a global empire because the Industrial Revolution gave it 38% of world industrial output by 1850. The US became a superpower because by WW2, its share was 38.7%. Strong manufacturing means you set the rules. Weak manufacturing means you obey. Look at deindustrialized nations. Britain, once the workshop of the world, now 80% services, begging China to build its high-speed rail. The US, with only 11% of GDP for manufacturing, couldn't even produce masks in 2020, had to import from China. Detroit is the classic example. When manufacturing left, industry collapsed, the middle class vanished, and the city turned to ruins. That's the cost of hollowing out. You can print money, you can play finance games, but money can't be eaten. Stocks can't be worn. Only manufacturing turns resources into products, raw materials into wealth. China's obsession with manufacturing is really an obsession with controlling its destiny. Why did a single chip ban nearly crush ZTE? Because China still has weak spots in high-end manufacturing. But as long as the foundations of basic industry remain, China has a chance to turn the tables. America can cut chips, but not steel. They can block high-tech, but not basic industry. In 40 years, China went from an agrarian society to the world's factory by step-by-step accumulation. Today, when U.S. carriers enter the South China Sea, China has DF missiles ready. When the West imposes tech blockades, China has spare tire programs in place. Where does this confidence come from? From a complete industrial system, from powerful manufacturing, from being blasted open by British gunboats in 1840 to becoming the world's largest industrial power in 2010, China's journey of 170 years teaches one truth. Without manufacturing, there is no national sovereignty. Without an industrial system, there is no national dignity.